Into the wilderness he went, knowing he had to leave it all behind. Can you see it? Can you picture him standing at the edge of the home and looking in front of him and only seeing sand, shrubs, and stones? No one physically there to tell him it will be all right. 40 days he walked in the wilderness. He never gave up. He never turned to look back. He just moved forward. Then the time came. His voice came out of the wind like a screeching that would make your ears bleed.
If you are the Son of God, tell the stones to become bread.
You and I would have trembled, but he didn't. He stood firm and replied to his tempter. It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. He said this as if he had just finished the feast. He didn't have to think twice about his response. Then came the next challenge. The devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. Full of pride and sure that he could trick Jesus, he said to him,
If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.
Jesus answered him, It is written, do not put your Lord thy God to the test. He knew his purpose. He knew who he was, and he could not be moved. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor.
All this I will give to you, if you bow down and worship me.
Jesus said to him, Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. With those words, he showed everything about him. He didn't sway from his path. His heart remained pure. His love was founded, unmovable, unshakable.
It was a normal day. Nothing different. Catching fish, yelling at my brother, making sure none of the other fishermen got the best catch. We as fishermen are used to having people come out and wait for us along the shore, usually market vendors waiting to buy the fish that they needed. We were done with the fishing for the morning, and now it was the tedious chore of bringing in the nets in a way that wouldn't tangle. We had to be fast if we wanted to make a good profit. My brother and I were really great about bringing in the nets, and our prices were great. We considered ourselves the best fishermen, and well, the merchants liked us. Life as a fisherman was nothing extraordinary. As a matter of fact, it was a bit monotonous. An ordinary day until he showed up. At first, he was just walking about all the boats and staying to himself. He walked around with a confidence you only saw the soldiers, Pharisees, and scribes walk with. He didn't talk, but he seemed to be looking for someone. But who? Then he approached us and spoke. The words that came out of his mouth changed our lives forever. He looked at my brother and I and said, "Follow me." Just those two words were enough. I don't know how it happened. I was content with my life. But as soon as he spoke my name and told me to follow him, I wanted to run after him. Forget everything of who I had been and see what he had to offer. After he called us, we dropped our nets and left it all. The fresh catch of the day, the customers in line, our homes. We left everything. You might wonder why. It might not make sense to you, but it made sense to 10 other men. Some had the same lifestyle as us, and others were different. He didn't explain his process. We just wanted to see why us. What did he see in us? We were the lowest of our kind. Nothing special to offer, but he promised to make us fishers of men. At that, we would ponder if he knew what he was talking about. Each person that he called reacted the same way. He would walk by, say, "Follow me," and then keep walking. And like my brother and I, those men dropped everything they were doing and followed him. To everyone else who might have looked crazy, but we just knew there was a reason. There was something that we needed to hear, see, and experience. Whenever he spoke to one of us, it was as if there was a pull that we just couldn't fight off. We knew our lives were about to change, but we never imagined it would be to this magnitude.
There were always crowds around him. He was always teaching, never turning anyone away, even when they could have been stoned in front of him. He had so much love and compassion for everyone. People came from everywhere. There were so many whispers about him, but the people around him just wanted to hear him teach, expecting to catch a glimpse of his power, but even more, his love. He always seemed to be at the right place at the right time. And as if that wasn't enough, people sought him out day and night. Some had a good reason. Some, however, were just trying to question him and make him out to be the enemy of all. Some saw him as an answer, others as a threat. I saw him as my only hope. Before him, I was confused and lonely. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and it nearly cost me my life. So when they threw me before him, I was expecting death, but instead, he gave me life. I wasn't the only one. Once a centurion came to him saying, "My servant is sick," and he sent forth only his word, and the centurion's servant was healed immediately. As if that wasn't enough, once he used mud to heal a man's eyes. Mud! Who uses mud? Well, he did, and the blind man since birth was able to see for the very first time. There was one miracle that left people astounded. It was when he brought forth Lazarus from the dead. The dead! After several days of everyone mourning, he walks to the tomb and says, "Lazarus, come forth." And he arose as if he had just been asleep. Things with his accusers became more intense, but that didn't stop him from doing what he was called to do. I remember once how 10 lepers came to him and asked him to heal them, and he did. All of them received their healing, but only one came back to say thank you. Just one. That sometimes was the part that bothered me about so many people following him around. They just wanted to see what they could get out of him. One of the most amazing moments was when a woman, who everyone else ignored and rejected, said to herself, "If only I could touch his garment, I will be made whole." She fought through the crowds, stretched forth her hand, and touched him. He immediately stopped and said, "Who touched me?" Everyone was confused by his reaction because he was surrounded by hundreds of people who were crowding all around him and touching him, still asking, "Who touched me?" Jesus turns and sees her and says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." People could not believe their eyes. Whispers rippled through the crowd of, "How could she? She doesn't deserve this." This was the only time he didn't have to speak the miracle, because the miracle was drawn out of him. He did so many things. He changed so many lives. With every miracle, the crowds grew. Some were only spectators, others were followers, and some were accusers. No matter what the group you were in, one thing was for sure. You couldn't deny the fact that when he spoke, things changed.
He separated us and asked us to go deeper into the garden. He looked tired and seemed weary. I mean, we had seen him tired before, but this night was different. It was as if he was carrying the weight of the world upon him. We had our Passover meal earlier, and things he said left us feeling a bit cold. One of us betray him? Had he not seen how devoted we had been all along? When he called us, we dropped everything and just went. Others tried to follow him, but weren't able to let go of all that they thought was important. How could he think that of us? We've walked with him for 3 years. And why does he keep saying the hour is near? He asked for us to pray with him, which we always did, but tonight just seems different. The night seemed to have more hours. We all just felt tired. Our thoughts had all been chaos ever since the revelation that we would betray him. We all started to pray as he walked in deeper to the garden. We all prayed for revelation from the Almighty God, but then we woke up to him calling our names. How horrible of us. He seemed hurt, but there was no wounds on him. He walked back to his place of prayer, and we all returned to pray. Well, once again, he woke us up. Maybe he was right. If we couldn't even pray with him at this moment, maybe we would betray him. He went back to the prayer and then came back to let us know that it was time. At that moment, Judas walks up to him and kisses him on the cheek, called him master. That was normal to us. We always greeted him in that manner, but Jesus knew better and told him, "You betray me with a kiss?" At that moment, we were surrounded. All our tempers flared up. One of us even cut off the ear of a soldier, but then he took control of the situation again. He healed the soldier, healed him as if he wasn't there to bring him harm, and got after Peter for letting his anger get the best of him. When he performed that miracle, we thought it would for sure change the soldier's mind, but it didn't. And his words came true. We all betrayed him. Some ran scared for their lives, others denied him. One turned him in to be judged. Every word he had spoken had always turned out to be true. I don't know why we thought this was any different. Maybe because we had spent every day together since he had called us. Maybe because we were his disciples and he had chosen us. That meant nothing at the hour he needed us more. What was most painful about all this was the fact that he had already told us that we were forgiven for our betrayal. Already forgiven. Only he could call lowlives and thieves and show them a different lifestyle. And only he could forgive us for walking away from him at the moment and tell us that we had a purpose greater than what he had showed us. And only he could do what was about to happen next.
Could this really be happening? Crowds surrounded him, but it wasn't as before. Before this, he was followed because they wanted to hear what he was going to talk about, or they needed healing. Before, they would cry out his name and call him Lord. Now it was different. Crucify him, they would shout. Did they forget? Did they no longer remember what he did for them? Everyone was there at the trial, the whole town witnessing the injustice and not doing a thing to save him. But the most confusing thing was how he stood there. He didn't argue. He hardly even spoke. He could have silenced them all, but instead he just let the lies and twisted versions of events be spoken about him. He stood there. And then the court. Hatred, violence, was all you saw in people's eyes. Did they honestly forget how he fed them, healed them, took away all confusion, all the fear? The first whip was almost unbelievable. I felt that soon I would wake up from this nightmare, but I didn't. The hits continued. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I stopped counting after that because it seemed that the soldier was just getting warmed up. The blood started to fill the cracks on the floor. His body was slowly becoming deformed. His face unrecognizable. But he did his best not to scream. In pain to not groan. There was plenty of noise. Those yelling for more. Those weeping for mercy. And those mocking him. They finally stopped hitting him. Seeing that they were not going to get the reaction they wanted from him, the mocking, however, did continue. They placed a crown of thorns on his bloody and swollen head and made sure the thorns were digged into his forehead. As if it wasn't enough, they placed a robe on his open wounds. All he did was flinch. He did have much strength in him. Then they brought in a cross. Everyone's eyes moved back and forth to see his reaction, the symbol of his death. Then at that moment he stood, with all determination in his eyes, approached his cross and held it as if it was the thing he loved most. He placed it on his shoulder and began to walk. At times his feet faltered and he would trip and fall, but he never stopped holding that cross. Then he collapsed, the blood still running and the rope soaked with so much blood that the dirt started to turn into mud. He laid on the floor with the cross on his side, the Roman soldiers kicking him to get him being unresponsive. So they grabbed someone from the crowd to help him. Simon was his name. He was reluctant at first, but he couldn't argue with the soldiers. He knew the threat would not be void. He picked up the cross and helped Jesus to his feet. No one knows if Jesus told him anything. No one could hear anything. Accusations turned only to whispers, and sobs had become loud and drowning all of the other sounds. The path to Calvary was slow and torturous for all his followers, but for those who had accused him, it was long and frustrating. They nailed him to the cross. 3 nails, 1 cross, and a willing sacrifice. He hung there waiting for time to pass. And then when he did speak, his voice was hoarse and faint. He spoke to his mother. He spoke to me. And he spoke to the only other 2 people who were experiencing the very same pain that he was feeling. Both were criminals, rebels, paying for their crimes. But Jesus, he had done nothing wrong. One rebel insulted, questioned, and demanded from Jesus to save them that day, while the other asked him to remember him, and Jesus promised him that he would be in paradise. The skies grew dark as if foreshadowing the end. And with all the strength he had left, he let out a cry to his Father. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished. And then he took his last breath. With those words, it was all done. The earth shook. The curtain tore. The sacrifice was finished. A sacrifice that paid for all our sins, that has given us the ability to call God our Father.
Forsaken. He was forsaken. For sin he had become. And so the Father turned his face against the Son. The Son set its face against the earth, and darkness hung his body, now broken, laid lifeless in a tomb. But everything I was missing was found in him. For 3 days, everything I needed to make me whole was enclosed within rock behind a stone I could never, ever roll. And I didn't yet know him, but behind that rock was my father, separated. If I could just reach him, I think he'd tell me I'm his daughter and not an orphan. But for 3 days, he laid lifeless. I needed him to speak, but he never seemed so silent. If you were only to listen to the quiet, you'd swear he didn't care at all. You'd swear he wasn't there at all. So, call the fight. Call the fight, that's what all of hell yelled, but they had another thing coming. 'Cause see, beneath the earth there was a rumbling that even rock could not withstand, and no hand could be seen, but suddenly the earth began to quake, the stone began to shift. 'Cause see, everything we needed was behind it. And so the father looked down and said, that stone has got to go. He called an angel, said, boo, that boulder is blocked. And so now that rock got to roll, and suddenly the rock rolled away. And something happened when the rock rolled away the sins of a world. The rock rolled away the shame of every man, woman, boy, and girl who was yet to exist. 'Cause see, when he said it is finished, he didn't mean over, he meant accomplished. He meant love and mercy now had an accomplice named grace. And so when the price for us became too great, grace reached deep into his pocket and said, I got this. See, Jesus didn't go to hell and steal any key, he bought it. And then God the Father breathed into his body, and the same breath that revived a crucified Jesus reached into the future, took hold of my past, called it a present, asked me to give it to him unwrapped. No more hiding, no fig leaves, no faking, no masks. And it took me a while to come, but he said I was worth the wait. So I apologized for my load being so heavy, and he said I was worth the wait. And he'd take my burden if I'd take his. I did. It was so light. And though I was stained, he touched me, and so I thought him courageous. But little did I know the same power that raised him was contagious. It spread to every dead place in me. I was no longer allowed to die in sin, for death could not exist in the same skin as him, and now he was in me. So every time he breathed, so did my dreams, so did my passion, my vision, my marriage, my children, my self-esteem. Life leaped out of him, then leaked out of me in the form of tears, but no longer of shame or sorrow, but the joy of knowing I can face any tomorrow, because in me he lives, and death cannot exist in the same skin as him.
It's furious, His love is sweet, His love is wild, and it's waking hearts to life. Yeah, His love. Awakening, you're awakening, you are awakening. Hearts alive, hearts alive, hearts alive.